Posłuchaj podcastów Estrady Poznańskiej. Znajdź najlepszy dla siebie. O bogatej historii estrady. Podcast filmowy Kina Muza. O kobietach i kulturze, nie tylko dla kobiet. O muzyce i artystach, których warto posłuchać. O grach i kulturze grania. Podcast dla rodziców. Jak nie zwariować. Podcast o serialach. Podpowiadamy, co zobaczyć. Do usłyszenia.
Hello everybody to another Q&A session on 13th International Animated Film Festival Animator in Poznań, Poland, but we are worldwide since we go to online and as you already know probably also the meetings with the directors are also online. I hope there is a lot of you. I don't know how much of the audience of this Q&A is right now. I hope there is a lot of you and I'm counting on your questions. If you have any, don't hesitate and just write it. I will ask it to my guests. And my guests, of course, they are the directors of the movies from the third set of the short competition movies. This set is called Life as a Deadly Disease. So, as you can saw, because I guess you are just after the screening, we'll maybe go more serious, maybe not. We shall see. So my guests are Jack O'Shea, the director of Dream Report, right here, right from Dublin, Ireland. Also we have here Ola Rosset, editor of I Am Here, from Łódź, Poland. And last but not least, Nicolas Fattouh, director of How My Grandmother Become a Chair, from Monsouf, Lebanon. Hello guys, I'm very proud and honored that you are here with me. So I will start with a question to all of you, because as I said, the topic, the theme of this set is Life as a Deadly Disease. First of all, are you agree with this statement that life is a deadly disease? Because all of your movies in some way is about death. Some of them like very metaphorical, some of them literally about death. Yeah, I see you smiling, Jack, because your one is very metaphorically. But we will go to there. And the thing I'm interested is because all of your movies they have different vibe, different climate, very different. They are totally different in case of the form of the narration, but still there are some connection of the topic. So my question is, what is your approach to death in your movies? Is it really there, or is it just some changes? Okay, we can start with Ola, maybe?
Yes.
I know it's a long and complicated question, forgive me.
It's right. Well, there is actually no other option in life than to die in the end. So in some ways, yes, it's a chronic illness, people would say, that ends in dying. But I would say life should be treated more happily, maybe focus on the good parts. Even though Julia's movie, she's a director, Julia Orlik, her movie is hands-on experience with death. So our approach was mostly a serious one. And this is also how I would personally regard death as a topic.
Okay, thank you. Jack, what about death in your case?
Well, I think how's the sound level, by the way? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. There wasn't so much a literal handling of death in mine, I would say. Certainly it is, an idea of a rebirth, I guess, and within that is death by its nature. That was sort of my take on it. Yeah, I tried to invest it with some sort of, I wouldn't say spirituality, but the idea of a deeper reality. Yeah, and I guess death plays an interesting role in that, in terms of, like you're saying about rebirth. I guess there's a physical ending of one point, and the idea of a deeper reality. That's kind of what interests me about death, I think. Whatever you interpret that deeper reality to be, the idea that there may be or may not is what sort of drew me to the story that was based on.
Yeah, actually, that's why I was talking about before, because I guess it depends on the viewer, on the audience, how to take this departure in the end of their movie, and this, as you say, rebirth in some way. So some can take it as some kind of death, but as you say, the death not need to be like the end. It can be also the beginning of something else. So like you said, the rebirth. Okay, thank you. And Nicolas?
Yes, my film is also about death, and even if death is a difficult thing to deal with, I wanted to show it in a lighter way and to give something positive about it, and show that in the end of the day, the people that we lose might live through the pieces of furniture that they use. So I wanted to give hope in a hopeful way about that.
So in some way, in your movies also the rebirth, but
the rebirth, yes.
Yeah, like
but
ending of something and start of something else.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I will stay with you for one question. How my grandmother became a chair. Actually, there is only one character. Of course, not the entire movie, but not the entire film. But there is one human character. All of other characters are like animals. So why you choose to animalize those characters? Is it some kind of symbolic thing, or just your narration? I don't know. Looks better with this. Why you choose this kind of way of presenting people?
I wanted to use the animal characters because there is characteristic and attributes of these animals that looks like the characters of the human beings. For example, in the film, the housekeeper in the beginning has an animal shape. She's between a cat and a dog. And because she was like that in the beginning of the film because she wasn't treated as part of the family. But throughout the film, she will gain her human form when grandmother discover that she was the real family that deserve her the most. And for the children, there are roosters in the beginning because they are always fighting with each other. And in Lebanon, we say that roosters are a symbol of greediness. And we can never put two roosters together because they will fight, and each one of them wants to be dominant, and each one wants to have everything for himself. So this is why I wanted to use these animals in the movie.
Okay, thank you. Now I skip to the dream report. First of all, I need to ask you about the title, because you used the word dream.
I did.
Yeah, that's the thing that after the screening I never think about your character and all the story that it's a dream. I think it's it's real. The aliens is really there and all the situation is really there. but the title suggests us something else. So I know you probably think that you left the interpretation to the audience, as all of you, of course, says that there is some space for interpretation. But why you choose to name the film The Dream Report, not I don't know, the Alien Report or something else like that?
I guess I tried to structure it in a way that you could take it that it was that either it was kind of about precognitive dreams, or that it was a non-linear, that it was a flash forward in some ways and all this stuff did happen, or you could take the view that it was all within the mind of the character and it was subjective and it was just a response to all of the non-goings on in his day-to-day life, which you saw. That makes sense.
Yeah, okay, so I have a follow-up question to the main character, because you combine some way, the science fiction aesthetics, of course, with the like the feeling and the image of the aliens, like the most classical ever, like the saucers and all that stuff, and then you combine it with that totally normal like person. I'm asking this because we're somehow accustomed to the fact that the science fiction movies, they're also like the normal character, but in the end it appears that they are not so normal, they are special. But your character from the beginning, I guess, till the end, he still is like normal, calm, peace character, and all these routines that he made in the beginning, and then this saucer like appear in his life, and he's not impressed about this, So why you choose to combine the science fiction with such an ordinary character?
Thanks. That's I take that in a very positive way that you picked up on all that, because there was a lot of thought into those decisions. So thank you, first of all, for making note of all that. Yeah, like that. I guess cinematographically, like the cinematography is obviously really important for that, because I made sure the whole premise really of it was I did like the idea of a consistency of character where despite whatever's happening, they react in the same way. So obviously I didn't really want to do that through performance, because that's not necessarily the side of animation that speaks to me most. So I thought it would be interesting to do that through the cinematography. So even though these really otherworldly events are ongoing, they're shot and composed in the same way as the most humdrum events that he experiences every day. So like you say, he looks out the window of a spaceship the same way he looks out the window of his apartment building or his car in traffic. It all means the same to him. Because I don't know, I guess I'm rambling on here, but I think I don't know. I think if I think I think it's truer to life. I don't think everybody does. I think some people are consistent that way, and if you're true to yourself, you take the rough and the smooth kind of the same way, don't you?
Okay, thank you. Now I skip to Ola. Actually, I have a question to you as an editor of the movie. Was editing of this movie a challenge for you? Because the movie is basically no motion. There is no motion in the movie. So my question is how your work actually looks with this kind of no motion movie. Of course, there is in the backgrounds there are some moves. There are always some moves, but they are so delicate, so that somebody can even don't see it. So how was the work with such not non-classic narration but no motion narration?
So I would say it was quite difficult because it was a challenge. I didn't have a place to hide with my edit. I didn't have any cuttings.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So the tempo was the key, I think, and how to make this story believable and not boring due to the fact that we have one shot all the time, like one perspective. What we were trying to do with Julia, and Julia was really open when she came to me to edit this movie, was to how to make the story shine. And we actually cut out 5 minutes of the material, which is quite a lot considering it was already fully animated and it was like a puppet animation. So that's quite a lot of footage. But she was really, really nice to me and she allowed to make some changes. And thanks to these changes, we were able to keep some kind of a tempo and momentum, also making the viewer treat the main character as a living person. I think that was the biggest challenge for me during the editing. How to make this woman who is laying in front of us all the time, almost not moving, alive, actually, because she's there. That's the title, I'm here. So I think, yeah, that was the biggest issue.
Okay. Because of these invisible moves, as you said, in some way, for me, definitely, the movie has greater impact. That's what you were saying, that it probably was very challenging to see that show that she's alive, and I think, for example, I can see it, and that was a hard thing to show, definitely. Another question, maybe not directly to you. Because I need to ask you about the background. Is it in some way based on the real story?
Yes.
Because you know the situation in the movie in Poland, I guess it's very common when somebody is like guys. Maybe it's also in some way question to you, because the movie is about dying old person, and in Poland. There is, I can use the word ritual, that when the person is already in the hospital, a whole family is going there. You know, they want to finding the lost time, the time when everybody was not there. So there is a lot of rush, a lot of talking around those dying person. So. For me, it's a big problem, and all of your movies is also about the loneliness, the solitude. But I will go later to this. But the question about I Am Here, do you think, and maybe you know that what Julia think about it, that this situation when people gather around. Dying people and they searching for the lost time is that how can I say this, I can say it in Latin, the signum temporis, right?
Well, it was based,
the sign of times, the sign of times for the modern world.
It was based on Julia's experience as she was a small child. There is a scene in the movie where there are people gathering around the birthday of this old woman, singing happy birthday song to her. And she, as a small child, experienced the same thing with her great grandmother who was passing away. And this really shaped the whole idea of the movie. The rest of the plot was obviously scripted later, but this one incident was something that she took from her life to give this story to people. And I also think this scene hits the most for me, as in the next one we see that people who celebrated the birthday with her abandon her, leaving her to maybe go to sleep, maybe to rest, but she's still well aware that they are over there and she's not a part of their life. She's not there. She can't be there, even though she probably would love that. And it was really pulling strings in my heart when I was seeing this footage for the first time. It was a key scene for me that I knew it has to be some kind of enlightened point in the movie.
Okay. Can I ask you guys about the situation in your Nicolas? Your movie is in some way in the same thing, but of course the main character in your movie is waiting for family, but she's not, like literally dying at the bed, in hospital. So do you think that the family in the end somehow will also have this thing that they lost the last time? It's already based on your life, right? The last scene in the credits said that you that you dedicate the movie to the grandmother and the lady with her. So I assume that somehow it's based on your own life. So what can you tell us about this family death waiting issue?
Yes. Yes, it's true. The film is based on the story of my family. And my grandmother has always lived with her housekeeper. And even if she had someone with her, she always felt lonely because the housekeeper wasn't the person that she wanted to be with her, but she wanted only her family around. And this is why grandmother was always felt lonely, and she was losing her senses one after the other. And because the children didn't live with their mother, when they come back to the house in the end of the film, they do not recognize their mother who has transformed. And this is why we do not have a special moment of them saying goodbye to their mother, because they didn't live with her, so they did not recognize her. And the special moment that happens, the final moment that happens, is with the housekeeper, between the grandmother and the housekeeper who lived with her.
Yeah, but this thing is because they don't have time. They don't have. They don't want to visit her, or it's just the coincidence.
It's not they do not want to visit her. Of course, everyone likes their mother, but when they grow up, they have their own families and they have their own things to deal with, their own problems, and they didn't have time to stay with the mother. So it's like everyone gets married and is now occupied by his new family. So this is the reason why.
Okay, sure, thank you. I mentioned about the loneliness because in every of the movie of your films, I see a big impact of big thing about loneliness. Again, in each of the film is slightly different. I will start with Jack. How is with the loneliness with your character? Because sometimes you wait for somebody, sometimes you can't wait to end of some way, and in case of you, the loneliness somehow brings the aliens to the character, right? Or maybe not. But I'm asking about this loneliness. How important the loneliness is in your movie?
Yeah, it's a key theme. I think any kind of, I guess, just through whatever experience, it's always that theme of kind of estrangement is always gonna leak through one's experience. It's hard not to make a film that has that, I think, if that is your experience. But I tried not to force it. I always find that's very if you watch a film that deals with that theme, that tries to push it, it kind of has the opposite effect, and you almost feel more alienated by that representation of loneliness. Whereas if you just depict things as they are for a person who's experiencing that, I think it captures it. And I guess what I was trying to do was, I think sometimes the feeling of loneliness, you can almost feel more lonely even in company, if that company means so little to you. So that's kind of what I was trying to do with him, still responding the same way when he's surrounded by, otherworldly creatures as he is when he's on his own. That loneliness does, I don't think I guess it's saying it's not an obvious solution to it, maybe.
Okay. What about you, Ola, about the loneliness in I'm Here? Because that's kind of strange loneliness, because every time there is somebody around the bed, but the feeling of loneliness of the main characters is so obvious. You can see it, that in the end she's lonely. She's the only maybe not living right person, but we can see her, and we can see that to sometimes she still lives, she's still breathing, but she's lonely. All the people actually around her not care about her. They care about each other and care about what others says, I guess. So what's about the loneliness in I'm Here?
I would not necessarily agree with that, because I think this old woman has a really loving husband that he's trying his best to help her and aid her and take away the pain, but he can't. She's for sure lonely as she's in this experience, and she's kind of locked away from people. She cannot communicate what her needs are and how she can be helped. And obviously there will be times when she's either alone or she just is, we cannot know what's going on in her brain due to the lack of communication. But the family is really involved in the caring process. So I would not necessarily agree on that. It's extremely hard for me to imagine what this character, even if we would take this animation to real life, would go through. It's an extremely difficult situation. And I think we can see how it gets worse and worse during the movie. In the end, when we die, somebody may be by our side, but still we are lonely in this process, and we're going to go lonely to the other side. Yes, it's a difficult thing for sure in this movie, the topic of loneliness.
Okay, thank you. And Nicola, what can you tell us about the loneliness in your movie? You already said some things, but maybe you can tell us more about how the process in case of your grandmother was.
Yes, in the film, in the beginning, grandmother is lonely because she misses her children and they are not next to her. But little by little, when her housekeeper starts to transform into a human being, she starts to feel like she has a family next to her. She has someone that cares about her and loves her. So this is how the film evolves. So in the beginning, she feels very lonely, but she feels like she has someone next to her to take care of her.
Okay, my last question to all of you will be about some technical aspects of your movies. Maybe we can start with Ola. There is, of course, this is a puppet movie, but there is also the first plan and the second plan. Was every puppets in the movie built from the scratch, and they like, because we can see only the main character, and the others they are like from only the legs or only the hands and so on. So how much work you and Julia, mostly Julia, put in the making of this little no motion, almost no motion movie, but still there is a motion?
I think it was quite a lot of work from Julia. As far as I know, the puppets were made mostly or from scratch. The thing that is mostly interesting is about the face of the woman. The face is getting, in the time of the movie, how the movie is progressing, the face is getting more and more older. It is due to how the materials that were used to make the puppets were handled. So it's really interesting because as the person gets older and sicker, also the materials are deteriorating. So it's in both ways interesting process to do. For me as an editor, it was quite interesting option to have the other characters only in the background, not seeing their faces. It gave me a lot of space to work with dialogue tempo, which is quite important in that movie, and also dialogue changes. We had some changes in the whole narration, so that also enabled us to be more fluent with the animation editing.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Jack? Because your style is also very interesting. Very metaphorical. I can say it, yeah. But I'm very curious about one thing. Why you choose to present aliens in the most classical way? So you are not tempted to somehow go with the crazy ride about aliens.
It kind of goes back to one of your earlier questions. I guess it's part of the whole. I was trying to maintain a kind of a deadpan detachment the whole way. So, I think sometimes if you draw from like iconic imagery, it kind of, it sort of, it just present. How should I say this? Like I kind of wanted. Well, I guess it also goes back to like it's trying to present it as somebody's idea of what an alien is. Like that's what I'm saying, but it could just be in his head because that's what the most ordinary person would. I'm trying to make him an everyman, so the most ordinary person would think of an alien in that way. You know, he's not an interesting character. So if all of this it was in his mind, that's how somebody like that would picture an alien. Obviously, in animation, you can do whatever you want, and one thing I find quite frustrating, I will say, dealing with people like, because I would deal with some film people quite a bit, and they have an idea that, you know, I mean, live action film people, and they say that, oh, you can do anything in animation. But the interest and challenge, I think, is the restraint you put on yourself as to what you don't do, you know. So that was one of the things I didn't want to do, was have a wacky alien.
Yeah, okay, totally understandable. Thank you. And what about you, Nicolas? Because your animation from those three animations is the most classical. You know, like, but very interesting in your animation is the colors. That was the thing that was very bright to me. Like, whoa, there is something about the colors. I can't say you actually what it was, but it works. Like, because your palette was like a couple of colors only, and those distinction between the sea or the darkness or whatever it is, and the rest is so clear. So why you choose those colors and those like classical animation to show us your ideas?
Yes. I wanted to use 2D simple animation because now I do not have like all my memories of my grandmother, and if I want to look at her, I can only see her on pictures. So this is why I didn't want to use something that is 3D or with how do we say it, with a 3D or stop motion. And I used, for example, the color of the sea is black because the sea is a representation of death, because it is the element that took grandmother, and it's in the sea where the last transformation that happens to her, she became finally her chair inside the sea. For the colors, I wanted to use like a calm palette, and except for when the children are there because they are toxic, I wanted to use green to make it a little bit scary, to make it a little bit like toxic. And for the rest of the film, I wanted to use like earthy colors and light colors to make it calm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you a lot for the answers. I hope that you are not bored and the audience were not bored. You must forgive me sometimes, and that was a long day. So, so sorry for that.
Hey, your questions are really good. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope maybe we can see each other live next year or the year after. I hope your next films will be also on in the competition of Animator Festival, and I wish you luck to in the competition. Maybe we will see again when you were online getting the award. Okay, so thanks a lot. See you soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Posłuchaj podcastów Estrady Poznańskiej. Znajdź najlepszy dla siebie. O bogatej historii estrady. Podcast filmowy Kina Muza. O kobietach i kulturze, nie tylko dla kobiet. O muzyce i artystach, których warto posłuchać. O grach i kulturze grania. Podcast dla rodziców. Jak nie zwariować? Podcast o serialach. Podpowiadamy, co zobaczyć. Do usłyszenia. Posłuchaj podcastów Estrady Poznańskiej. Znajdź najlepszy dla siebie. O bogatej historii estrady. Podcast filmowy Kina Muza. O kobietach i kulturze, nie tylko dla kobiet. O muzyce i artystach, których warto posłuchać. O grach i kulturze grania. Podcast dla rodziców. Jak nie zwariować. Podcast o serialach. Podpowiadamy, co zobaczyć. Do usłyszenia.
Hello, everybody. I hope there's a lot of you and watching us. The last, actually, Q&A of this 13th International Animated Film Festival Animator here in Poznań, Poland. The last, but not least, I have Klahr with me, the director of Circumstantial Pleasures. Hello there.
Hi.
He is broadcasting right from Los Angeles, California, and the temperature is like very high there. So the climate is, I guess, maybe I can start with the climate and all this that changes, because your movie is very political. Of course, it is. So maybe the climate changes is not the most important topic in your movie, but there is a lot of different stuff you put it in, like supply chains, like pandemic, capitalism, politicians. My question is there one thing that you think is the most important in your work? Like maybe your general work, not only the circumstantial pleasures, but is there any aspect of modern times, modern life that you want to show us at most?
Well, yes, there is. What I'm interested in is raising questions for the audience that's about thinking about not issues in isolation by themselves, but how they interrelate, how they connect. So yes, the film deals with climate change and the environmental crisis and even the pandemic, even though I made it before the pandemic, right? When the movie premiered, it was on the eve of the pandemic in New York City in a screening, and the audience just suddenly was very, whereas people had trouble understanding the film before, then they didn't once that happened. It was very present tense, and it was very, very immediate for them. So some people thought the movie was prophetic, but people have been talking about a pandemic like the world is in now since the early 2000s. And I first made a film about it back in 2007 or 8, which was my first time working in digital, which is what Circumstantial Pleasures is made in, is digital. So a lot of what I'm doing is trying to raise questions about how everything relates, how capitalism stands in the way of many kinds of solutions to these problems. And you just get people to think and create what this feels like. The amount, many people feel tremendous anxiety about this, even though not much is being done to address these major, world-changing issues.
Okay, you said that your goal is to raise the questions, ask the question to people. But do you think that other problem is also the lack of knowledge in the societies? You know, as you say, the scientists and a lot of people speak loud about the pandemic, about other problems from like 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. Of course, they're speaking a lot about it right now. But do you think, as somebody say, you prophet, do you think, because nowadays there's a lot of talking about the environment, about the climate changes, do you think that we will be end the same way? That, 20 years ago they said about pandemic, now they say, of course, about the climate changes also they say 20 and even more, but they still talking about this, and actually, as you say, the capitalism is a big obstacle to do something with this. What else is those obstacles on the way to, maybe it's a big word, but the better world?
Well, as I've thought about this over the years, one thing that occurs to me, and I'm just talking as a normal person, but one thing that occurs to me is that as a species, we as humans we tend to react to things that we can see and experience. But we tend to not be so good at planning for things that, and doing advanced work on things that are not available to us as immediate experience. And I think that's a big part of everybody's problem with this issue. And so, capitalism is maybe the biggest roadblock. It really needs to start to change, especially here in the US. Just with the relationship to things that we throw away, for instance, the kind of pollution that's occurred in the oceans from plastic, and it's if there's one thing the pandemic has made clear to me, it's that there's a lot of things are possible if we think they're important enough. But right now, what the world has been oriented towards for far too long is a kind of sense of like how economies are functioning. And that's not necessarily a good thing in a crisis like this. I think we have to approach it the way countries would normally approach a war, So, I am no prophet, and I don't know how this is going to go, and I'm kind of naturally optimistic and pessimistic at the same time. So I think about it can go a lot of different ways. I think the world is in for some very challenging decades now. And I care about it personally because I have a son that's 21 years old. I'm 64. I don't know how much longer I'll be around anyway. But I certainly care about it for my son, in the most personal sense.
Yeah, sure. One more follow-up question to this thing, because do you think maybe this crisis can turn out to be a good thing for us? Because maybe nature call us, guys, hello, I'm here. Like you need to do something with the things you're going on. So that's my question. Do you think that actually this can be a good thing for us?
Yes, I do. But there are many people in the world who are in such deep denial about this, and they seem to have a lot of political power, like the people in control of my government here in the US right now. It's not gonna be fixed with people like that who are ignoring science and ignoring the realities of what happens. I live in California. One of the things I'm struggling with right now is climate change related. There's tremendous wildfires out here, which I've lived out here for 20 years, over 20 years, and they've never been as bad as this, ever. These are unprecedented. And even though I'm in a city and not in the country, the smoke comes into the city. And I have days where I basically have to stay in an air-conditioned room or I can't function. You know, it's hurting my eyes so much. The air is so bad, right? And so this is very immediate and present tense now. And that, I think, tends to motivate people to make changes, you know, so.
Yeah, okay. Now maybe we can go back to your film for a while.
Sure.
I need to ask you about the narration. We in some way we already scratched the topic, but my question is why you decide not to showing the particular characters, not to showing the people as it is, but you are more showing us the situations and some chain of reactions, something like this. That in one part it starts and then it goes through to the final outcome. So why you choose this kind of narration?
Well, it relates to the themes that we've been talking about, which is that individual people in this are just small parts of it in one way. It isn't the story. There's not a story here, but there's a description, and the description I'm giving is about how these systems work, which are very much human driven, right? And humans use them. But what I want to call attention to is the way things are hiding in plain sight in front of us. Like, for instance, the amount of plastic that we actually use. So I started to collect plastic in the early part of the century to use in a film like this. That I didn't know exactly what I was going to make, but this is what it's turned out to be, and it took 6-7 years to make this film. And I started to get into what the shapes were of the plastic, what it was used for. It has a certain kind of beauty. It has a ugliness. It has a toxicity, and these were all things that I wanted us to think about, as opposed to, you buy something, you rip through the wrappers, the containers, to get at what it is, the object that you bought. And where does all this go, right? After you have the object, it goes in the garbage. And where does the garbage go? So it's all these kinds of questions. But I wanted to make, in a sense, I wanted to make the plastic and these systems the protagonist of the film.
Yeah, the way of the product, right? Because in my case, I want to know the people, for example, how the meat goes to their tables, because for a lot of people, the meat is also the product. They like buy it in a plastic. It's
Right.
beautiful, it's red, and but I'm worried that in the future the kids don't even know that that was an like animal. So
Yeah.
that's that. I'm speaking this because for me it's very important what you are doing. The whole process. It's very, very important, and in our modern world, this process is so long, and it's even longer, every year, because we buy everything from China, everything from like the other side of the world, and this is another big problem with, for example, drugs and like medicine drugs, that some parts are produced in the other side of the world, and then we go with COVID, and whoa, we have a problem here. So So that's another thing. Okay, my next question about the narration. It's about about the chapters, because most of your movies are shorts, and you decide. I guess it's your second feature.
No, I've made many of these since.
Yeah, but the chapters with the chapters.
Yeah,
So
I've made many like
okay.
this since the 1990s.
Okay, so still, why you choose to use the chapters? So it's like you know, the split of shorts, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's the whole, you know, the whole thing. So why you choose to use those chapter form?
When I'm doing a good job, which I hope I did for you and for the audience, as you know, with Circumstantial Pleasures, when I'm doing a good job, when I put these things together, the different shorts, I'm very careful about how I arrange them and how they build off each other. I'll give you a very concrete example in a moment. Something that occurs that's related to animation, actually. I think that the sum of the films together exceeds, you know, is greater than what you get from watching them each individually, which you can. They're standalone pieces. They're standalone films. You could watch them individually. But the arrangement brings out other kinds of qualities. And here's a good example of what I'm describing, which is when you get to the second to last film, which is called High Rise. And it's a little film that I shot on my cell phone in China on a high-speed train in 2016. When you watch that film in this context, so number one, it's changing everything because you've watched cutout and collage imagery until this moment, nothing live, right? But now you're seeing live action. But the way I'm framing the train journey, you're seeing the tracks and you're seeing the wall, like the metal guard that keeps people off the tracks going by at a very high speed. And it's kind of those things, the way they move, they've kind of become like an animation or film going through a projector at that point. And because you've been watching all this graphic two-dimensional imagery collaged, there's a way that city, which is being, you know, this housing development, which is very large, which is being built, also kind of looks like, is that you have to wonder what it is you're watching at that point. Is it live action? Is it? It kind of looks like something out of a video game almost to some people. I've been asked by very smart viewers, like, what is that? And what is it an animation? Is it? So there's this confusion even as to type. Now, if you just watch that on its own, it wouldn't have that dimension to it without watching, you know, all the films beforehand.
Yeah, you are not. They're not prepared that there will be something like this, and maybe they've. I actually have the same things, the same thoughts, but then okay, it's a nice effect actually on the train, because if you watch the back, there is a still image. When you go in the front, there's a like high speed, so it's a nice experiment. But yeah, sure. If it out of the context, it's the taking this is totally different, right?
Yeah. So that's the most obvious example. But there's many other examples of the way that films get changed by their order of the way you watch them.
Okay, but it's
yeah,
but it's still, you know, the pieces that you glued together. By why you choose to make it all alone? Because it's the matter of the time. Because, you know, for example, you do a short, and then you do another short and another short and another short, and then you think, okay, this should be here, this here, and maybe not. So maybe we can change it.
Yes.
Maybe I will add another thing, because you said you're doing this film for like, sorry for that, but you're doing this film like for seven years. So
Yes.
a lot of things change, you know, in this 7 years. So did the places of those chapters also change in the middle in this time?
Very much so. Very much so. This was one of the hardest films to make I've ever made, because normally when I make these films, I'm using old imagery that's not current anymore, that's outmoded. And it has a kind of more of a dreamlike quality, because it's from the past, and it's how far in the past it's from makes it come alive in a very different way. So here I'm using things that are current mostly. And working on this, I experienced exactly what you're describing, Peter, which is that everything kept changing. And I would finish a version of these different films, and then I'd look at it and live with it a little while, and I'd go to myself, oh, that's not good. Not doing this anymore. And I have to take the film. Some of them got retitled in the series. There's like the final, the title film that finishes the series with the Scott Walker music. Originally, I was working with the imagery that's in the first film, Capitalist Rotors, and that was called Circumstantial Pleasures, and it was even in a gallery show in Zurich in 2016 as Circumstantial Pleasures. So everything kept shifting on me, and I had to, and this is, I think this is quite common with especially this decade and the amount of changes going on. Like I read the famous science fiction author William Gibson. I read an article about him, and he had to delay the release of a recent novel for the same reason, which was about the current situation, and it kept shifting so much that he couldn't. You
need to make an update, right?
Make an update even before he could get the book out. And it's happening to me in different ways. So I could really relate to what Mr. Gibson was, the frustration that Mr. Gibson was surely experiencing. So so it's been very difficult that way. Now you've asked this other question, which I want to answer, which I didn't answer before. You kind of asked it twice now, which is about why I work with the series and the short.
Yeah. So why you choose to make the shorts? Because you ever thought about making like long feature film, not cut into the chapters? Do you ever thought about it? Because it's some kind of stamp for you, right? That you work this way. But there was maybe in sometimes that idea that maybe I will change something.
This is a big topic. A big question you're asking. So I have made films that are continuous, that are feature length, that don't have, chapters, don't have shorter films that make it up. But most of what I do, I work in what's called series. And I think that this relates somewhat to one of my main inspirations growing up and as a teenager, which is I was very excited about music and listening to pop music and rock music. And one of the structures that really mattered to me was the idea of a long playing album, right? An LP, and how those are always structured out of a series of songs, which
Yeah,
usually, sometimes could go like the length of a side when you're listening to vinyl, but usually didn't, right? They usually weren't continuous. There's many, many songs that make up, and so that became a model for me. Artists use all kinds of things as models, and that they're imitating for one reason or another, and that's a structure that I love and is kind of in my DNA. As that structure. And so I'm very comfortable that way. It's much harder for me to make something continuous that is, feature length. It's a different, it's a very different challenge than how I'm working with.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge because you mentioned LPs, like in music. Some of albums are like very I don't know how it's say, like concept albums. From the beginning till the end, everything goes on and on. But sometimes there is like every song is from different fairy tale. So you are not worried about it that sometime you will do this kind of album, like that.
I am doing concept albums in a way. Like that's a good comparison, Peter. I think you described it very well. I think like especially Circumstantial Pleasures, very thematically coherent about capitalism, the environmental crisis, the world today. Right? So it's like a concept album. It's like the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper or Frank Sinatra's great album from '66 about being middle-aged, right? The September of My Years, I think it's called.
Yeah, but you are not afraid that in some way, in some moment of your career, of your movie making, you are create this non-concept album, like that the songs will not exactly fit to itself.
No, I'm not concerned about that because if I want to do that, that's a valid way to work also. I mean, I'm interested in all kinds of different ways of approaching things, actually, and always have been. One of the things that I'm excited about as a filmmaker is asking the audience to change the way that they're like through the film, that film to film, it asks you to engage differently than the previous film. So one film might have a story, the next film may not at all, right? And then how do you deal with that shift? Now, why am I interested in that? Partly because I'm interested in describing consciousness.
Okay.
And how somebody, in this case me, but how you think, and how things occur to you, right?
Okay, let's change the thing for a while. I need to ask you about your digging, your method of collecting the materials to your movies, because it's very, very interesting. Like you are doing. Maybe this is the reason why the whole process of your movie is so long, or you are just you're doing it for so much years that you are exactly know what you're looking for, because you are using like the scratches from the papers, the footages that you found somewhere. That's the question. Where?
Yeah. Being a collage artist, there's a saying I like to talk about with my students. I say, when you're a collage artist, you get what's coming to you. And what I mean by that is the things that you're interested in, you tend to find them, They're out there in the world and they come and they catch your attention. And it's I see this with other filmmakers too. like when they work with found materials, that they get things that express their deepest themes, even if they're live action filmmakers, right? And so I don't really collect so much anymore because I have a garage in Los Angeles. People do a lot of work in their garages on the things that they care about. Like they sort of lead their secret lives in their garages. I am no exception to that. But I have so much material in there that I can barely walk in there, right? That I've collected. So I'm not collecting so much, but that's decades of collecting. And I would be able to leaf through a book in a thrift store and know whether or not I wanted it or not. Now things are a little harder online in some regards because you don't get to leaf through the book, right? So you got to kind of take chances, But yeah, so like what I was talking about before with collecting plastics, this began my son was about 6 years old. So this was like 2004, 2003, maybe when he was 5. And he got all these presents. And I started to I got excited about the plastic wrappings and what I could do with them, right? Because it hit me that they were collage materials that I could use. And then the funny thing happened. He would go after he saw me do this, he would go to birthday parties and he would see something that he has a very good eye. And he said, he would say to the people, he'd say to the people, yeah, can I take it? My dad needs this. They must have thought he had some crazy dad.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's constant. Like you don't have to turn it on or off. It's just there, and you know what you're looking for the way that you work, right? And I don't think this is special to me. I think it's like true about collage artists, right?
Okay, so last question. You mentioned some because in Poland right now it's 11 p.m. So it's a little late, but still I need to scratch the one last thing because you of course mentioned it about the music in your film because it's very important. It's very different in each chapters. So again, you said already something about this, but can I ask you how you choose the music to each chapter and why this kind of climate, this kind of vibe in particular chapters?
That's a huge question, but in this film I was using all experimental music, even the Scott Walker piece at the end, which is operatic and has lyrics and singing, and the rest of it's all instrumental. These things were, even that's experimental. They're all experimental music. Two of the artists, Tom Rashan and David Rosenboom, are like icons of experimental music, especially here in Los Angeles. And fortunately for me, they're both friends of mine.
Yeah.
So, but they're both, very famous if you care about that kind of music, which I do. And so in this case, what I was looking for were things that kind of had the hardness and created a sonic landscape that was like what I was trying to describe about the world, about the technological world and how cold it is and toxic, and electronic, right? So maybe the best example is in Virulent Capital, which is this piece that David Rosenboom composed on analog computers back in 1968 or 69, right? So here I am making this totally contemporary work, but I'm using music that's much older, right? Tom Rashan's music that I'm using is much more recent. It's from the early, the first decade of this century. The Scott Walker is from 2012, right? But these things sound very current still. So, what I wanted to do structurally was have all these instrumental pieces and then break into Scott Walker's piece where I was hoping it would sort of shift the experience. It goes back to what I was talking about engagements, by having lyrics and singing, right? And I thought maybe that piece, because the lyrics tell something of a story, that might become more narrative. There might be these characters that are more continuous that haven't been in the other pieces. And as I worked on it, I found that wasn't possible. And it went a way that I didn't expect and didn't plan, but was equally excited about. Where one of the things I'm very pleased about, in terms of my own aesthetic aspirations, is that I was able, despite his lyrics and his singing, and he was an extraordinary singer and lyricist, extraordinary composer. I made something that accompanies it and sort of duets with it, but does not at all illustrate what's in those lyrics or completely in the singing. It's like there's another sense of connection between what I'm doing. So in the piece, in Circumstantial Pleasures, at times I'm using excerpts of longer pieces. So I'm doing some editing, I'm doing some montaging of them together, like it's in Capitalist Rotors, the first film, I'm using a composition, 4 minutes of a composition by David Rosenboom, and then the rest of the piece, the other 13 minutes is two different pieces by Tom Rashan. So I'm doing some montaging, but most of the time I leave things intact. And I like to have that map that somebody else created. And there's an aesthetic and philosophical position in there about that. As a collage artist, the aesthetic part is that one is always collaborating. One is using things one didn't make. And this is a way of drawing attention to it, the way I use music. I use music as another found source material, just like the images are. The other thing that's philosophical about this, and this is maybe a good place to end our conversation, is that what's happening here is I'm collaborating. Sometimes when people don't know that I'm collaborating with them, but there's an interaction that's saying, it's not just me. It isn't about, and the survival of the world, I think, depends on this now with the problems we're facing, is all of us cooperating more. And collage has that as part of its DNA, is this idea of us cooperating, building on what has been, making it new again. And so to me, it's very helpful and optimistic as a form in that regard.
Yeah,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a actually great point. That in the collage in your movie, there are, for example, the demonstration of two people that never can meet, but it's important that they are both so near to each other and so close. And as you said, that the cooperation of the image in your case and in the case of humanity, like everybody of us, that's the most important thing. thank you. We end like really serious about the message. Yeah, but that's great. Thank you. Thank you for this meeting. I hope maybe in some future you will visit here in Poland, Poznań, on Animator Festival when the times, I hope it will got back to normal. Depends on what normal means, but just leave it that. My guest was Klahr, the director of Circumstantial Pleasures. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Posłuchaj podcastów Estrady Poznańskiej. Znajdź najlepszy dla siebie. O bogatej historii estrady. Podcast filmowy Kina Muza. O kobietach i kulturze, nie tylko dla kobiet. O muzyce i artystach, których warto posłuchać. O grach i kulturze grania. Podcast dla rodziców. Jak nie zwariować. Podcast o serialach. Podpowiadamy, co zobaczyć. Do usłyszenia.